Sterling is always a tough act to follow, and I don't mind one bit. I'm Ryan Basille. I'm one of the co-organizers and also a co-founder along with Sterling, Clark, and Sophia St. James. I prepared a little something because I get nervous in spaces like these. It's hard enough to make yourself vulnerable and to express that truth to one person that's safe when they're sitting across maybe the couch from you. And this is even harder, and I just appreciate all of your support. I know that you're here to support and ally with us, and you're here to show that we are all survivors, and if not survivors ourselves, we definitely know one. Today, we're marching for the right to be sovereign over one's body. We're marching for sexual justice, which is rooted in the sacred principle of personal autonomy. In the end, our bodies belong to us and us alone. They do not belong to our partners, to our children, to our parents, to our presidents. We can use our bodies to love and serve others. We can give hugs and orgasms, invite others to find refuge and comfort and ecstasy in our embraces. But in the end, our bodies are always ours. Sexual justice is about giving all of us the right to say yes to pleasure without shame or fear. Yes! It's also about giving all of us the right to say no, in the certainty that no will be respected regardless of who we are, whom we've touched, what we're wearing, or how we identify. I want to assert that we did not start this movement. It is only a continuation and expansion of the road our foremothers and forefathers have paved for us. In the organization of the Slutwalk movement, the word slut from our own mouths has received more of a public outcry and concern over distaste than when hurled on the streets by strangers or muttered under the breaths in our offices, our schools, or at the grocery store. The word hurled at women and other marginalized folks just prior to physicalized violence and assault. We embrace and hold up this word to light. This word used to cause harm and represent the threat and that's my southern coming out, y'all. And materialization of sexualized violence as an example. It has been used to denigrate a person's worth, self, dignity, and value in society. By reclaiming the unique charge of the word slut, we assert that no one, not our perpetrators, not society, nor people who wish the survivors to suffer alone in silence and shame, have this power to dehumanize us. Equally, what we have worn to these events since January when it began has garnered more attention and interest than our own words or message, or the issue of the global rape epidemic ever has been given in accessible media ever. This has been done just as much by mainstream media as social justice and feminist groups we thought were allies. For the last time, my eyes are up here and my words and experience matter. For too long, there has been a division in our feminisms over sexuality and sex work, and we are here to end that today. Now, on to why I am here. I am Ryan Basille. I am an intimate partner violence advocate. I've done this work for about half a decade. I am a former sex worker. I am a sex worker rights advocate, and I am a dedicated harm reduction worker. An overwhelming amount, a clear majority of survivors know their perpetrator well, and a majority of crimes happen in the victim's home, the home of a friend, a relative, or neighbor. It is far more often someone we trust, know, and love rather than a survivor lurking in the shadows. For me, it was first my father, and then my partner. Both times I was woken up from my sleep. Both times when I came out looking for support to the communities and individuals I thought should naturally believe and support me, like the overwhelming majority of survivors, I was failed, silenced, and shamed. When I was older, I started asking about my abuse. I was not believed, I was punished, and I was confronted with anger. When I was an adult, the same thing happened. When I came out to my community, the queer, social justice, feminist, nonprofit, academic communities, the same thing happened. Everyone turned their backs and would not touch it. No one out of all of these networks would mediate or participate in the perpetrator's accountability process. When the perpetrator is an advocate, a feminist, and an organizer, no one would touch it, but they should have. Stories like mine are not isolated. They are not niche. They are just as widespread as they are anywhere else. Given the chance today, I want to deeply emphasize the critical need for us to come forward, to recognize sexual violence in all of our communities. I want each of us to dedicate ourselves personally to believing survivors' truths, validating their experiences, and participating responsibly in the perpetrator's accountability process. This need is not conditional on whether the perpetrator of violence and abuse is your friend, your partner, your mentor, your employer, someone you admire, a mutual friend, someone who is looked up to in the community, someone who is powerful or popular. Reclaiming the authorship over my own experience, taking that pen from the perpetrator's hand, refusing to let others speak for me regardless of my foibles or fails, refusing, okay, like that one, has been a journey and a collective culture that I am proud to share with many of you here. My personal identity as a survivor has led me on a path in which I have built myself as a tender warrior and better equipped me with the tools and compassion to shepherd others through their journey as they need or want me. My identity as a survivor and ally is a badge I wear proudly, no matter the space or reception. My personal identity as a survivor has made me a strong and dedicated woman, whatever that means to me in this life right now. But it is not the impetus for why I co-founded this walk. My experience as an advocate and ally is, it has acquainted me with the beauty and strength in others, the extraordinary capacity of survivors, of sex workers, and other marginalized folks, for their resilience, forgiveness, and entrepreneurial subversion of the oppression that many of us were born into. Recently, a study came out, and I want to talk about it. The results of this 2010 study confirmed what many of us are intimately and painfully aware of. The statistics found that LGBTQI, people of color, and transgender women are subject to a disproportionate number of attacks. 70% of those 27 murders in 2010 of the queer community were people of color, while women who were trans made up 44% of those murder victims. A main impetus for organizing this walk are the beautiful, brilliant, creative people and the bonds and friendships we shared being swiftly shattered by murder, sexualized violence, and the violence perpetrated by policy, law enforcement, transphobia, homophobia, and racism. In the 80s and 90s, Gary Ridgway, known as the Green River Killer, murdered 71 sex workers and runaways engaged in survival sex work in Washington before he was caught. Gary clearly and unrepentantly explained that he targeted sex workers because they were vulnerable, could not go to the police, and because no one would care if those people went missing, quote unquote. In Rhode Island this past year, 8 sex workers were murdered and their bodies disposed of, and the suspect is believed to be a police officer. This is not unusual to me in the slightest, and that reality is sad. As I have experienced firsthand, I know law enforcement as my direct perpetrator, not those who serve or protect us. Another impetus for organizing this walk is to carry the truth that homophobia and transphobia are valid and real forms of sexualized violence, and the recognition of this truth is urgent. It is long overdue for advocacy organizations in all of our communities to recognize this and act accordingly. When I bound my chest and failed passing as a guy on the streets of Richmond, Virginia, as anywhere else, there was a price to pay. Dykes and queers are forcibly assaulted as a means of correction, and in the attempt to colonize their bodies and sexualities all over the world. Just as much, gender and sexuality norms are policed through rape and sexual harassment. As people who free themselves, as people who free themselves from, or otherwise do not adhere to, traditional gender presentations of masculine and feminine, are raped and assaulted for failing to pass someone else's standard, perpetuated by the myth that there is one sexuality. Not true. A patriarchal one, where sex is a way to strip someone of their strength, individuality, will, a tool to assert dominance through the exploit of power. But here we are a wrench in your machine, proving that power is claimed and reclaimed, shared, multiplied, expressed through nonconformity and breaking silence, through resilience, beauty, all that is innately in our nature, not something that can be conquered or stolen. All of us here today are testaments to our own innate strength and power, resilience and beauty, brilliance and dedication. In honoring the survivorhood of ourselves, of your friends, your siblings, lovers, spouses, children, and the survivorhood ahead, hopefully less than we are experiencing today. We are fully reclaiming the authorship of a new power, personal and collective, that cannot be conquered. Who we decide to be, our futures. Today, we are doing all of this, and we are starting with the word slut.